This is the story of a train journey set in the United States in the 1920s. One day, there were two gentlemen, along with several other people, on a train journey between two cities in the United States of America. One of these gentlemen was a young person, and the other was an old individual. Now, these were the days at those times where there was no social media and there was no platform for this young person to spend time. So he decided to strike a conversation with this old gentleman who was seated bang opposite him. Now, this young gentleman was a reasonably flamboyant person who liked to talk a lot. He worked for an organization in the financial services sector in New York. He was reasonably knowledgeable, and hence he decided that he would share some of his thoughts and knowledge with this old man seated opposite, whom on his first look he felt that may not know much. So this young individual reached out or started the conversation to this old person, first with casual remarks pertaining to the weather and what time the train would reach the destination that he wanted to go to. And slowly they got talking. The old man was more of a listener, while the young person kept talking. He spoke a lot about his knowledge pertaining to the financial services domain. In addition to that, he also had a deep interest in science. So this young person started speaking to the old gentleman about the latest scientific inventions. And that was when he realized that this old gentleman possibly does not know much. And somewhere he got a sadistic pleasure understanding about that. So what he decided to do was to show off his knowledge, underestimating this particular old gentleman who he assessed doesn't know anything about science. And he started speaking about various developments which happened in the field of science in those days. This old gentleman was a silent listener. He kept listening to whatever this young person had to say, which was many a times very pompous. However, he decided to just understand what this young person was saying. So hours passed, and the train station where this old gentleman had to get down, that came. And at that point of time, the young person, who was really happy that he was able to show off his knowledge pertaining to science and various inventions to this old gentleman who seemed to know nothing about science, he realized that they spoke on a lot of things. However, they didn't have a formal introduction. So what this young person did, he gave his visiting card as the old person was going to exit the train, and introduced himself formally there, although it was a few hours since the both of them met and started talking. And as the old gentleman was moving away, he requested the old gentleman to pass on his business card, presuming that possibly this old gentleman may not have his business card. However, this gentleman reached out to his pocket, took a business card, and gave it to this young gentleman and just left. This young gentleman took the card and sat on his seat because he had his train station just coming after this. So there was some more time for him. So he just sat, and on the card was written General Electric. And as he turned his card, it was the name Thomas Alva Edison. Yes, my dear friends, the few hours this young person was speaking so much about his knowledge pertaining to science was none other than Thomas Alva Edison, the great inventor who possibly had 1,000 plus patents to his name, who was also a catalyst in getting electricity to the forefront, among various other scientific inventions which were his contribution to mankind. So this story also brings out the fact that you never underestimate someone. And we talk about the 1920s, where, as I mentioned, there were not too many avenues for people to be highly recognized. So, possibly one of the reasons that this young man couldn't identify Thomas Alva Edison, because at that point of time he had grown really old and he also had chronic diabetes. And many of his pictures, also, which came in newspapers, which were one of the primary platform for someone to understand or recognize a person, that possibly also had his younger version of the pictures. And so, since he had pretty aged at that point of time, this young man couldn't understand that it was none other than the great Thomas Alva Edison. So, coming to the moot point pertaining to the story, many a times we underestimate people around us. Many a times we judge people by their dressing, by their demeanor, and we understand or we try to make our own judgment pertaining to what the value of the person is. The best approach is never underestimate anyone or overestimate yourself. The issue is you may not know really too much about a person, and just by making judgments, just like how this particular young gentleman did, you may end up having a tough time or falling flat on your face because of the reason that this person may be more than you have judged or more than you have assessed. So, required to share the story with you about Thomas Alva Edison and this young person. Thank you very much for your time. Have a fabulous week ahead.